welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our wonderful panelists. We couldn't do this without you. Those of you tuning in for the first time, CT Talks is a relatively new webinar series, and our mission is to bring you insightful conversations that connect you with the people of Caltrans. So as a reminder, this is open to the public and to our Caltrans employees. This is all about educating others about the wonderful programs and people that we have here at Caltrans. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you for your keen interest, and it's going to be a really interesting panel today. We're excited for this one. So what are we going to cover today? Two simple bullets. Firstly, we're going to hear from our three wonderful panelists on their experience and their insights in the environmental field. And then you will have an opportunity at the end to ask your burning questions. And you can feel free to ask your questions throughout. We're just kind of going to try and save the Q&A for the end. But if anything pops up, feel free to throw it in the chat. And also feel free to throw some encouragement up for our amazing panelists who we're going to introduce. We have Lindsay Vivian, Quint Hemney, and Helen Blackmore. Thank you so much for joining us, you three. Everyone in the chat, you can say hey, you can give them an applause. Let's welcome these wonderful people. So thank you all for being here. We're really thrilled to get this going. So to introduce you all, we have some biographies, brief biographies for you. So firstly is Lindsay Vivian. So Lindsay has her Bachelor's of Science and her Master's of Science in Biology from the University of Nebraska at Kearney. Lindsay joined Caltrans District 4 Bay Area in 2012 as an associate biologist in the Office of Biological Studies, in the Office of Biological Sciences and Permits, where she contributed to advancing complex projects in the coastal zone. Such projects included the Estero Americano Bridge Replacement Project and the Gleason Beach Roadway Realignment Project. In 2016, Lindsay promoted to Senior Environmental Planner in the Headquarters Division of Environmental Analysis, where in addition to working as a course developer and instructor, she coordinated the headquarters divisions and all 12 districts to better incorporate environmental and wildlife connectivity considerations into Caltrans project planning and development processes. Lindsay returned to District 4, the Bay Area in 2019 in the Division of Environmental Planning and Engineering in a temporary capacity and later promoted to Office Chief in July of 2020. Lindsay is currently the Office Chief of the Office of Biological Sciences and Permits, a position she's held since June of 2023, where she manages an office of 35 people and leads her team in complying with state and federal regulations on projects throughout the 9 counties of the Bay Area. Welcome, Lindsay.
Hi, thank you. All right, so next up, we have our second panelist. I'd like to introduce Quint Hemney, who is a Senior Environmental Planner for the Division of Local Assistance in the Office of Environmental Compliance and Outreach, ECO, out of headquarters. After receiving his master's in soil science from Texas Tech University, Quint began his Caltrans career in District 7, Los Angeles as an environmental planner working on local assistance projects. He has worked on a wide variety of projects that gave him the background needed to make the move from the ECO office and headquarters a little over a year ago. He now helps District 7, Los Angeles, District 8 in San Bernardino, District 11 in San Diego, and District 12, Orange County, deliver local assistance projects and stay abreast of any changes to environmental policy. Quint also helps train local agencies, consultants, and Caltrans staff on environmental compliance with regard to local assistance or off the state highway system projects. Welcome and thanks for joining us, Quint.
Thanks for having me.
Right, and last but certainly not least, we have Helen Blackmore, who started her Caltrans career as a staff architectural historian and is currently the branch chief in the Office of Cultural Resource Studies in District 4, the Bay Area. Helen has her Master of Science in Historic Preservation from the University of Oregon and has been with Caltrans since 2014. During the past 9 years, she has worked on complex environmental projects, partnering with local agencies and stakeholders to develop the best environmental outcomes. Some of these projects include the Yerba Buena Island Ramps Project and Saratoga Creek Bridge. Both projects required extensive collaboration, both internally and externally, to complete environmental avoidance, minimization, and mitigation measures. Helen also has experience working with local assistants and maintenance programs. Welcome, Helen. Thanks for being with us today.
Of course, thanks.
All right, and with that, I'm going to kick it back over to Laura to get us started with our Q&A for our panel.
All right, so let's go. So the first question is to tell us about your Caltrans career journey, and I'm going to go ahead and start off with Helen.
Department of Transportation in their cultural resource program in their office. So I had kind of that DOT experience there, which was really phenomenal. And my supervisor there also happened to be my thesis advisor while I was doing my master's. So that was kind of my first taste of working for a state agency. And then I was lucky enough to get hired at Caltrans as starting out as, the entry-level environmental planner, brackets architectural history, and then kind of promoted through in that office. Yeah, I think one of my favorite parts is knowing that you can be a historian and work at Caltrans in compliance, right? Which is like we're a huge engineering company who cares about history. So yeah, the Office of Cultural Resource Studies, which I've been in permanently since I started. We cover Section 106 compliance, which is part of the National Historic Preservation Act, as well as state compliance under Public Resource Code 5024. And so I'll stop boring you with compliance acronyms and names, but yeah, it's a great position. I work with historians and archaeologists to ensure that we're developing those avoidance measures as best we can for our projects under NEPA and CEQA. Yeah, I've had an opportunity to do a couple different acting assignments in the last few years here, which has been really great. I've acted as the office chief for cultural resources in District 4, as well as the environmental maintenance office chief in the maintenance division, which was really a great time and understanding and learning all the complex works that maintenance does as well. So yeah, I feel like that's the taster, right?
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Helen. I appreciate it. So next, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Quint, if you want to share a little bit about your experience and your decisions that shaped your career path here at Caltrans.
Sure. For me, I was, finishing up grad school, not really knowing what I wanted to do. And I had a family friend in San Diego that worked for Caltrans, and she mentioned that I should apply. I did, and sometime later, as we all know, the process is can be lengthy at times. Sometime later, I got an invite to interview in Los Angeles, where I was luckily hired in the environmental planning department, and I worked on local assistance projects from day one. And for those of you that are not familiar with local assistance, those are projects at Caltrans that are off the state highway system. So we work with local agencies, counties, other MPOs. Anyways, I did that for, goodness, 14 years or so, and just recently made the move to headquarters, doing something similar. Still working in local assistance as an environmental planner, but now I'm helping the districts deliver projects as opposed to delivering them myself. And as was already said, Caltrans is a great place. Lots of opportunity. Coming out of school, I didn't even know there was an environmental portion or environmental unit at Caltrans. I can't be the only one. I assumed it was just an engineering firm. But I'm glad that I was lucky enough to get hired, and I'm been here ever since.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Quint. How about for you, Lindsay? Take us on your career journey and what that's been like with Caltrans.
Sounds good. Kind of similar. I didn't know there was such a big environmental field at Caltrans or any DOT really. They have environmental, yeah, I came from Nebraska, as you mentioned, University of Nebraska at Kearney, go Lopers, and today go Huskers. The women's volleyball team is in down to the Sweet 16 of volleyball, but missing the game right now, but airing at 11 a.m. our time. But I was not, growing up, I did not envision myself working for a DOT. I knew I wanted to be in the environmental field and help protect the environment, concern about environmental conservation while going to school. Just didn't know what a career in environmental protection would look like. And I was looking for jobs on the West Coast. I was at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I spent 3 years with them while I was in grad school, during and after graduate school in Nebraska. And I'd spent time out east after undergraduate. I spent some time with the AmeriCorps, with the Student Conservation Association, building and maintaining trails and doing trail work in Massachusetts. And maybe it was there that I found an affinity for linear infrastructure and working with large teams to avoid and minimize environmental impacts while delivering transportation projects. But the position description for a Caltrans biologist really caught my attention. And so I applied, and many months later, like Quinn's experience, our hiring process has gotten much faster since 2012, but I moved out to Oakland, California, and thought I would be here for 2 years, and I've since been Caltrans for 11. So I thought I would move back to the Midwest and go back home, but I have very much enjoyed my time at Caltrans, much more than I could have ever expected, and it's just afforded me a lot of opportunity working as a staff biologist here in District 4 on a variety of projects. No day is the same, but working as a district biologist, delivering permits and technical studies for the approval of our projects in the Bay Area. And then I was fortunate enough to go up to headquarters for a few years, where I was able to coordinate with all the districts on a variety of issues and topics and teach different classes. And then the pull of District 4 and the excitement of delivering projects was too strong. So I came back to the district in 2019, and I've been here ever since. And now I get to lead the office that I started in back in 2012. So I'm currently back with the Office of Biological Sciences and Permits with a great team of people here in Oakland.
Awesome. Thank you much for all three of you just sharing that. Something that why we love doing this webinar is just the commonality of, the perception people have of Caltrans and opportunities. And you've all kind of spoke to that, how you weren't really sure, where your path would lead. And there's so much opportunities here and upward mobility, and you could just move around through the districts throughout our beautiful state and make the environmental impact that you all are doing. So we're super fortunate to have you here on our team. Thank you so much for the first question. So I'll hand it over to Harriet.
Yeah, I'm going to take the second question. So I love our panel today because you're all obviously working for a common goal, but everyone's doing very different roles. So I'm going to start with Helen. You mentioned like the historical responsibility. So and being a historian yourself, how does that play a part in like environmental responsibility? You mentioned that you do a lot of compliance work. Can you share a little bit more about that with us?
100%. Yeah, so there's 2 primary laws or regulations that we operate under for cultural resource compliance as a whole. So like cultural resources covers archaeology and architectural history. So it's like above and below ground, right? Like what's important culturally to our shared history of the space. That also includes like prehistoric resources. We do a lot of consultation with Native American tribes to ensure that their voice is heard throughout our compliance process. We're working more and more with, transportation planning and other groups, especially within environmental as a whole, to ensure that those voices are being heard. And often the cultural resource specialists are kind of like the first people that the tribes will interact with on projects, which is really exciting and helps us bring that voice forward. And so, yeah, we're thinking like above, below ground, like what's important. So archaeology sites, underground generally. And above ground, you have anything from like bridges, historic districts, whether they're built environment, you have buildings, right? Like it's not just the like, oh, here's the beautiful Victorian house on the corner. It's like all these other pieces, right? Across the state, there's like 300 historic bridges, both on and off the state highway system, Quint. It's equal split for local assistance. But yeah, so we work to ensure that any projects on our system or through the local assistance program avoid and minimize impacts. So whether that's ensuring that our projects completely avoid them through the establishment of environmentally sensitive areas, or if there's a need for monitoring, if we're physically altering parts of properties, or if we're needing to develop mitigation, if we're having a permanent and adverse impact or effect to the resources. And so real briefly for cultural resources, I'll give a little bit of my college class here.
Do it,
Perfect. To determine if a cultural resource is considered a quote unquote historic property, like the term of art under section 106, it needs to be eligible for the National Register of Historic Places, which is a program operated by the National Park Service. And so under that, there's 4 criteria that a property can be eligible for. And please cut me off when I get a little bit too in the weeds here. But A is for its association with broad patterns of history. So big changes in our history, and was that property influential in that? Is it a representation of that? Is associated with an important person under criterion B. C is the general and for the cultural resource people on here, forgive me for my pulling this back a little bit. C is for what we consider aesthetics or engineering prowess of a resource, right? And then D is for the potential to yield data significant to our past. And so we run through that. We make sure it still has historic integrity, which I won't get into. And then once we have a historic property under section 106 or PRC 5024, we go through the rest of the process, trying to avoid, minimize, or mitigate as needed. I'm working with our PDT and engineers to work that out. I feel like I only hit 8 different acronyms there, so sorry.
Yeah, for those that are tuning in that are not Caltrans employees, there's a lot of acronyms, so feel free to ask in the chat if you're not sure what we're talking about.
I could make a full sentence about my job that's acronyms only.
That's great.
That's great. Yeah.
Love it. Yeah. I had no idea there was such complexity. I mean, talking with you all and meeting with you previously, it's amazing to see the amount of mitigation that goes in, all the compliance. But even you just going through those A, B, C, D, that's just within one. It's wild to see the complexity of it all. So it's just talk about responsibility. There's a big checkoff list to moving forward with things and to keeping the integrity of our historic features. It's phenomenal. And thank you for sharing. That's very, very interesting to hear it from that perspective. So let me see. Let me hit Lindsay up. So Lindsay, you mentioned how you never really saw yourself working at a DOT. How do you feel now that you're in the DOT and you're obviously doing what you're doing and the environmental responsibility that your team works on? Can you share a bit about that?
That's a loaded question. No. Yeah, it is kind of ironic working for the largest developer in the state, or one of. I think we might be the largest developer, but all that aside, roads are a necessary part of our life, and getting to and from work and places important to us. But there's also a lot of opportunity at Caltrans within our day-to-day to contribute to environmental enhancement and protection and conservation within our projects. Caltrans has made a lot of headway and will continue to make a lot of headway with projects such as wildlife crossings and integrating fish passage improvements into our bridge and culvert replacement projects throughout the state, as well as integrating larger upsized culverts, or maybe replacing culverts with bridges to enhance wildlife passage and connectivity across our state highway system, enhancements to wetlands, and just contributing to environmental protection as we deliver transportation projects. And also with maintaining our highway system, we continually work with our project development teams, or as we say internally, another acronym, our PDTs. That's our bread and butter at Caltrans, and working with diverse teams of people and functional units across the district and across the state to develop context-sensitive solutions or design solutions to avoid and minimize impacts on the environment, whether it's to avoid a wetland or maybe a rare plant. Helen mentioned going into the weeds. We go into the weeds to look for rare plants throughout the, when we're doing our surveys and our inventories out in the field to determine what the environmental impacts of our projects will be. A lot of times we can find very clever ways to minimize our project footprint and avoid certain areas to, again, with the goal of lessening our environmental impacts as much as possible. And then where those impacts aren't avoidable, working with internally and externally with state and federal resource agencies to offset our project impacts through mitigation measures, used many times outside the state highway system. So working with local land trusts and organizations to set aside and protect certain areas, again, to offset those unavoidable impacts.
That's huge. I mean, yeah. Just hearing your background and your story, and you're very like conservation forward. I just love that you're obviously incorporating all of that into your role here. It's huge. So it sounds, and I thought you were gonna do a pun there. You're in the weeds, like going in the weeds. Was that, yeah, I caught a slight pun there. I like that.
It's literal for Lindsay.
Yeah, literally in the weeds. Love it, love it. Thank you for sharing, Lindsay. I appreciate it. Quint, from a local perspective, because I know that's kind of how you differ from Helen and Lindsay, how do you feel about the environmental responsibility that you play a part in?
Yeah, it's different. Well, I guess let me start with saying our goal is to help deliver a transportation project, right? So we want to make sure that when the locals have a project, there's a need for it, obviously. So we want to help them deliver that project, but at the same time, we want to make sure that they are taking environmental issues into consideration while delivering that transportation project. So, it's not just critters and trees and things that we're looking after. We're looking after connecting neighborhoods, environmental justice, underserved communities. That all falls under the environmental impact of projects, as well as, things like air quality, hazardous waste, biology, cultural, as we've heard. So there's a lot that goes into it. And I know from an outsider's perspective, the misconception is it's just trees and bunnies and things like that, which, yeah, we look after them too. We do our best, and I've only had to strap myself to a couple of trees so far in my career. No, I'm kidding. But we're here to help, again, deliver the transportation projects as our goal. And what we want to do is, again, make sure that not just the green environment, so to speak, but the people that live in the area are protected and safe now and for generations to come.
That's huge. And that's honestly a perspective I hadn't really thought about. So I'm really glad you touched on that, because yeah, the environment is more than, like you say, the bunnies and Lindsay's gonna leave that one alone. I love that. Check the chat. Lindsay is like on a roll right now. You're looking for a laugh. Checking the chat. But no, thank you for bringing that perspective, because yeah, you don't think about, the environment as like the living environment for the communities. And so that's huge that will plays a role and just adds into the extreme responsibility you will have. Again, no pressure. You're contributing so much and keeping things moving forward. So yeah, thank you for sharing that perspective. That's huge. And Laura's got your next question for you.
If you come to my office, we can
you have a whole book.
We can have a whole conversation in acronyms and puns.
That is phenomenal. I need that book. Okay.
Harriet warned you.
Well, thanks for sharing all of that. I'll go ahead and start on the third question, and I'll start with Quint. Tell us a little bit more about a career highlight. I know you've already mentioned so many different types of projects you've worked on, but is there anything that really stands out that you want to share and go into a little bit more detail?
was thinking about this. A career highlight for me is not necessarily a project that I've worked on at Caltrans. I think it's just working at Caltrans and just being exposed to a lot of different projects, a lot of different opportunities, some really great people that help you learn. You know, for the most part, everyone, we have a common goal. Again, not to beat the point, but we're here to deliver a project, a transportation project, right? So with that goal in mind, we're all working towards the same thing. And it's really nice when you come together as a team and, you know, you get this giant project, and piece by piece, you put it together and you get it done, you deliver it. And in the local assistance world, what's great is that oftentimes these projects are a little faster, and you can see them come into fruition a little quicker than some of the major projects on the capital side or that Caltrans builds, right? There was a time a while ago where we had ARA funds or stimulus funds that came into play, and those projects from the locals were shovel ready. They had to be done quick. You could tell they were going to make an impact right away in a community, you know, repaving these roads or fixing the sidewalk, things that are going to help now. And that really, I enjoyed that time, even though it was super busy. I enjoyed that time because I learned a lot. It helped me see projects as a whole. It helped me see the impact that we make when we deliver these projects. And I also learned how to streamline the process a little bit, you know, that I've carried into what I do now as well. So I thought, you know, again, it's not a project or anything, but just the overall experience of working at Caltrans, I think has been great. And the people, you know, it's hard to find a better place.
That's awesome. I love that. Just like touching on the support that you're getting with your team here at Caltrans and just all the professional development and just being able to work on these projects together and see them, you know, at the end, how rewarding that is, and just building that rapport with your team and making such a big impact in the community. So thank you for sharing that. How
Sure.
about for you, Lindsay? I know you mentioned touch on a little bit about wildlife crossings and bridges and culverts, but is there anything you want to share about your highlight with Caltrans or overall?
I'll share some photos, but I'll start off by seconding what Quint had to say, and that is the people, I think, at Caltrans just make this job what it is. Really, that's I'd say 90% of the job is our social interactions, and we have a lot of work to do, but we work with diverse teams of people and really wonderful people all over the state, internally and externally. I mentioned our state and federal agency partners, our consultants who support our work, just a lot of fantastic people we get to interact with day in, day out, and the team of people in our environmental division and District 4, and again elsewhere, but special shout out to District 4, of course, have to. But a highlight for me, I would say professionally, is working in beautiful areas, number one, the people, number one, beautiful areas, number two. On the coast, I won't go into slideshow mode, but just some photos are pretty old at this point, and most of them are from 2014, 2013, but back as an associate biologist in here in District 4, had a lot of projects on Highway 1 up in Marin and Sonoma counties, and any time of the year, but especially when it's the wet season and everything's really green, it's extra beautiful. So site visits with really great people. This was the upper left is a site visit with Caltrans PD team members, project development team members, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, etc., out looking at a proposed soldier pile wall project where we're working within a very environmental and training opportunities, especially for newer staff, learning how to plenty of wetlands at one of our 40-hour trainings that we tend to send people to within their first couple years at Caltrans. That was a group photo. And then the people I mentioned, just public meetings, working with diverse teams of people, again, to deliver our projects. And then a professional highlight is, and I know it will be a topic of a future CT Talks, and it'll be a whole hour dedicated to wildlife crossing. But here in the Bay Area, District 4, we're getting underway with planning for several different crossings on our highway system through grants funded by others like the Wildlife Conservation Board. And so here we are with a couple of folks out on State Route 152, the Pacheco Pass Highway that connects 101 and Interstate 5 in southern Santa Clara County. And Caltrans had the opportunity to work with High Speed Rail Authority and California Department of Fish and Wildlife, the Wildlife Conservation Board. And sorry, I'm trying to minimize this window. I can't figure that out right now, but procured a $3 million grant, $3.5 million grant, working at the Santa Clara Valley Habitat Agency and Space for Wildlife and a couple of other agencies that I'm probably going to forget to mention to study the Pacheco Pass corridor to look where we will construct a wildlife overpass within our right-of-way and to get that planning study and the feasibility study underway. And so it's well underway now, but this was has definitely been a career highlight within the last few years. And I will stop there. And I'm sorry I cannot figure out the technology here.
Thank you for sharing the photos. It just really makes it a lot easier for us to visualize it, showing the different projects, the landscapes.
Quint and Lindsay took my 1 and 2, right? 1, I love everyone I work with. Everyone's great, both internally and externally. And then Lindsay also brought up surveying on Marin and Sonoma 1 is like always going to be a highlight. Anytime I have an excuse these days to go survey out there, I will take it. And often like suggest to staff that they go as much as possible, especially up there. It's beautiful. I think for me, one of my highlights came following, it is project related, but it turned into a lot more than that. And so I worked on the Oakland Alameda Access Project. A shout out to Wahida, who I know is here, who I worked with on that project with. And so for that project, we had adverse effects to cultural resources, and we had a really engaged group of stakeholders, which I feel like in the older days, we like didn't necessarily want or to encourage such engagement, but now we're in this world where we really want feedback. We want to talk to people as much as possible and get buy-in to our projects, right, that are affecting the community. And so we're working really closely with the stakeholders on that project, and they really pushed us to develop avoidance and minimization measures outside of our kind of compliance nexus under Section 106, things that they felt strongly about that aren't necessarily within like our purview, but we were able to partner with them and the project team and Alameda CTC, who was the project proponent, really took on all the feedback that they got, and we really worked hard to preserve as much historic material to the Posey Tube as possible. And so throughout that process, we built really strong relationships, which has then spun off into like these different programs that we do and partner with those stakeholders. We've taken them on tours of other historic facilities that Caltrans owns. We partner with the California Preservation Foundation to kind of do webinars showing our great cultural resources that Caltrans owns and operates, which has been really great to share the information that way. So I think for me, it's kind of the success of partnerships and ensuring that we do that in a really meaningful and engaging way. It also allows them to know who to contact, right? Like, oh, contact Caltrans. What, there's like 20,000 of us statewide. So like it provides that contact information as well, right? Like we get involved with our stakeholders and they know who to reach out to for support. A lot of the people we engage with through cultural resource compliance, it's not their job. They're volunteers, or it's like a side hustle for them. Right? They think of your historical groups. Generally, we do a lot of consultation with libraries. Like, consulting with us is not their primary objective, right? And so a lot of the times we're asking for work outside of their regular day-to-day, and they always bring all the energy and all the ideas to our projects. And I think that's what's really part of my favorite thing of working at Caltrans is building those relationships.
Yeah, that just to touch on that, what you're saying, just the success of these partnerships with external entities is super important. Just being able to collaborate with them and be a part of it, bring their voices forward, like you mentioned earlier, definitely changes the future of, you know, the success of what Caltrans is doing and is improving that. But I know that there could be a lot of college students here on this webinar with us today, and everything that you three have shared just about the insights and an inside look of what your careers look like from day to day. It changes, and just all the relationships that you're building, the professional development, I know has to be super inspiring for anybody tuning in today. So thank you all for sharing all of that. I appreciate it. And so I'll hand it over to Harriet for number 4.
All right, well, I love that everyone kind of mentioned the people, because our last question is about partnerships playing a role in our success. So I love that there's so much to talk about here and kind of the complexities of it. So maybe I'll start with Lindsay this time. You shared some pictures, and you were talking about, like, with other departments, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and other entities. So can you share a bit about how these partnerships play a role in the success of the project?
Partnerships are a very big part of our work at Caltrans. We depend on many other people inside and outside of our organization to help us deliver our projects day in, day out. Internally, again, I talked about the PDT model that we have here at Caltrans, working as a team, going out, site visits, maybe even checking in with maintenance to see if they have data that they want to share about roadkill patterns in a certain area, or areas sometimes they can be the eyes and the ears on the ground, areas that might have rare plants that we haven't considered previously, or maybe working with construction or maintenance to understand different technologies or methods for maybe doing something differently, or minimizing impacts to an area, or accessing an area differently, so we can, again, minimize environmental harm where possible. Working with landscape on mitigation plans. It's a lot of internal partnering, but then external as well, with wildlife crossing grants and projects popping up all over the state, modeling after we have our spearheaders down in District 7. They'll talk about that wildlife crossing project going on. I think at the next episode, or Harriet can maybe talk more about that. I know there's a lot of interest in that topic lately, one I'm very passionate about. But yeah, we rely on universities, local experts to share data. So partnering when it comes to shared data and helping us identify the best locations and where the greatest need is for a wildlife crossing, or again, if it's understanding maybe where there's a rare plant or occurrences of threatened and endangered species. So we work with our agency partners. They might have knowledge or know an expert, and they can connect us to those partners. So again, data sharing, but then we work at Caltrans. We have federal and state responsibilities because we do act on behalf of Federal Highway Administration, FHWA, in California. And so we have those responsibilities, and we get to work with, makes for a very heavy workload, but also a very high degree of variety in the work that we do. And so if you, whichever, there's something for everybody at Caltrans, including in the environmental division. And if you want to become a wetlands expert or a birds expert, there's room for everyone. You can carve out a niche for yourself, but we get the opportunity to work with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the regional water quality control boards, the California Coastal Commission, and many, many other agencies, the Bay Conservation and Development Commission, which is unique to the Bay Area, to approve our projects. We have to obtain many permits and approvals prior to construction, but those people also become, our resource agency staff become a part of our larger PDTs and helping us deliver projects while minimizing environmental harm. And then with these other extracurricular projects, wildlife crossings and the like, they do take teams of people. It takes a village, and they're successful because they're a partnership effort. And so working with the Wildlife Conservation Board or Department of Fish and Wildlife, again, to help prepare grant applications or go after funding. There's a lot of state and federal money out there right now that we're pursuing, but it's not without our partners and helping to go after those opportunities, because they do tend to be very costly. Those larger projects tend to be very costly, and it takes more than, it's just more than Caltrans, of course. And so we enjoy and we rely on our partnerships to meet our goals, environmental goals at Caltrans.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, guaranteed there's partnerships statewide with Caltrans, but just so interesting to see you probably listed off, I don't even know how many different entities that we partner with, and just showing how many seats at the table it takes to make something happen. All these different experts, you're really maximizing all the resources that you have internally, like you said, within our complexity of what different vocations that we have here at Caltrans, but also externally with the different entities. It's just huge, and it's really really inspiring to see how many, you'd imagine how many meetings are done to move forward with these things, and how many different collaborative efforts. So thank you for sharing. That was extremely insightful. So I think, because Helen, you already kind of touched on your partnerships being one of your highlights, which I love. So I'm curious about Quint, if you can quickly answer your question, then maybe we'll have time to get to maybe one or two questions. And Helen, I'm going to start with you first, just forewarning. But Quint, can you share a little bit about the importance of partnerships in your success from the local side of things?
Sure. In the world of local assistance, partnerships is everything. We partner with FHWA as one of only a handful of states that has NEPA assignment. So right there, that's a big partnership between us and the FHWA, and we act on their behalf to work on these federally funded off-system projects. And then from there, we partner with the local agencies to get their projects done. And Lindsay already spoke about the internal partnerships that you need to deliver a project, which we have to deal with as well. But now you add in that layer of externals with local agencies, their consultants. A lot of times there's a political component to local assistance projects. And you really have to bring everyone to the table as a generalist, and create this relationship to move that ship forward, so to speak. And that's one of the things I love about local assistance, is that I like to solve problems. So you have this opportunity to bring everyone together and solve this problem. How do we move this project forward? Where everyone is satisfied, everyone is getting what they need, and how do we do it quickly, right? Funds expire. Local agencies need things done from a safety standpoint as soon as possible. So there's a lot of elements that you have to work together with other entities and through. So yeah, you can't say enough about the partnerships, and luckily the districts, they all do a great job. They know what they're doing. They're all professionals. So we just help them build their relationships from a headquarters standpoint now, when needed, if needed. So yeah, it's really neat to see some of these projects come to fruition, when they've started so far apart with all these different people involved and nobody's on the same page. And then, a couple of months later, they're like, we're going to construction. It's all good, Quint. We figured it out, so, and that, again, that comes with the people, working together, relationships, partnering. hopefully that answered your question. I rambled a little bit, but
yeah, no, absolutely. I love how you said that you're the problem solver too, and it sounds as though we're really well equipped. For those of you that are tuning in externally, we break up Caltrans into 12 different districts statewide. So when there's been reference to districts, District 4, Lindsay and Helen are, which is the Bay Area. Anyway, but it's great to know that there's such strong integral programs happening at a district level, and then coming back to you as the headquarters unit is just, you know, advisory, partnering, like you said, both internally and externally. It's just huge, like such a well-equipped system that is moving things forward as efficiently as possible, it sounds like. So no, thank you so much for the insights.
sure.
With that, that's the end of all questions. Helen, I hope you don't mind. I skipped you on the last one, but there's been a couple questions in the chat. One about drone technology was one of our first questions. I don't know, our previous CT Talks was about our drone usage, but I'm curious from the environmental perspective, if you have any insights on that. Do you have any usage? Do you utilize any of the data that's collected from any UAS or?
Yeah, I can go first and then pass it to Lindsay because I know Bia does work with it too. But I was actually on an email chain about using drones this week. And so something that is helpful for us for cultural resources is often drone footage will help us complete our kind of evaluations of resources. It allows us to see a larger landscape for the cultural resource, right? Like we can get further than if we're just standing within our right of way. So that's really helpful. And it can, yeah, kind of help build out a clearer picture of that landscape. We also use drones to complete mitigation measures in some cases. So our mitigation for cultural resources really stems to public information and distribution. Like our mitigation is always geared towards public education in general and interpretation. And so drones are a good resource to kind of help visualize that, right? Like they're gathering images. So yeah, that's kind of where our use comes in, especially, but I know Lindsay even has a drone operator in her office, I think.
Oh. Care to share, Lindsay?
It's a nascent program. Matthew Rex in my office, he's leading the creation and establishment of a drone program here in District 4. And we do have a couple of staff biologists who are obtaining their certifications and licenses to become drone pilots and riding on the coattails of headquarters and their statewide program. I'm forgetting names right now, but looking at the use of drone technology to augment our work. I don't think drones will ever replace the need for boots on the ground and having staff biologists and going out and doing rare plant inventories, but they can certainly enhance safety when going out and doing different surveys and accessing areas that we wouldn't be able to otherwise. And so I look forward to seeing their increase in usage in the future, but we're just getting off the ground with that, but we do intend to build out that program here in District 4. And we do have a couple of folks who have captured drone imagery of our different project areas, and it's just the resolution is pretty outstanding, and it really helps communicate our projects to the public when we do have public meetings. And I love what I'm seeing already, and I just think we'll continue to see more drone usage going forward.
That's awesome. Yeah, if there's anyone who is interested in learning more about the drones and like the acquisition of technology, our previous CT Talks was all about that with 4 different technology specialists. So we encourage you to check that one out. But thank you, Lindsay, for sharing on that. And Helen, you know, it's cool to see the incorporation of technology in, you know, these mitigation efforts. I especially imagine like wetland areas, there's only so far you can reach by foot. So it's very handy.
I did put that in the chat, Harriet, as well. There's different links I've been adding in there. So
I'll put the YouTube link. Yeah, I'll do that. Do you want to check and see if there's time for one more question, if there's something that stands out to you, Laura?
Email us.
Sorry, I don't know if it's me or you, but it cut out a minute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so if you are interested in any of the previous episodes, just email us at the link in the chat for DHR Communications, and we can send that over to you. And there's some other links in the chat as well to connect with these panelists on LinkedIn and the recruitment team too.
Okay, I'm just grabbing the CT Talks episode 3, but was there another question that we wanted to touch on? I think we got time for one more quickly.
Can you hear me okay, Harriet?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great, because my internet just kind of went out a little bit. There is a question regarding the wildlife crossings that Lindsay kind of touched on earlier. Somebody's just wanting to know if you could share a little bit more about current projects. I don't know if that's something you feel like you can touch on in a few minutes or not. Lindsay?
Yeah, I'll try. So the question is, I'm currently working on an undergraduate senior research project on wildlife habitat connectivity and roadkill mitigation. Could you share about current projects on that? And I'll try to be brief. I think within District 4, the Bay Area specifically, Caltrans, we're right now looking for opportunities to integrate wildlife crossing enhancements into our projects through upsizing culverts. If we have roadkill data, and we will reach out to maintenance to see if there are roadkill data available, if there's a high frequency of carcass collection along our roadsides in a certain area, or reach out to traffic safety, see if we have a high frequency or incidence of wildlife vehicle collisions, and maybe there's something that needs to be addressed. A lot of the species in the Bay Area that are most impacted by roads tend to be threatened and endangered species that are very small and that you wouldn't really notice that you're running over. One of them is the California red-legged frog and the California tiger salamander. So from a conservation perspective, our roads tend to bisect the areas that those species use for their life history. Where we might have a breeding habitat, a wetland on one side of the road, and upland areas where they spend the rest of their life cycle on the other side. And certain times of the year, especially the rainy season, that's when they start their migration and begin their breeding activities and tend to get killed in high numbers. So we do look for areas of that, such as on Highway 1 near Point Reyes. And we have a lot of culvert replacement projects on Highway 1. So looking to work with the PDT to upsize our infrastructure where possible to better facilitate wildlife movements, such as with those smaller species. In other areas of the state, we have roads that bisect migratory corridors, and a lot of money that's been obtained for projects in the planning phases where we're looking to make improvements on the highway system through the construction of underpasses or overpasses for wildlife connectivity purposes. And then in addition, working with our headquarters Division of Environmental Analysis to nominate and identify areas that are probable wildlife passage barriers where our highway poses a barrier to the movement of those threatened and endangered species and other wildlife species. And we have a fish and wildlife connectivity program at Caltrans. It's getting off the ground. And I look forward to the next webinar where we'll go more in depth into that topic and talk about some of the funding that has been set aside for wildlife crossing improvements on the highway system. And I think we'll just, in District 4, we haven't constructed anything yet, but talk to us in another 5 years and we'll have a few projects in the ground. One of them is the project being sponsored by the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District down on Highway 17 near Los Gatos in southern Santa Clara County. And it's big effort that they're leading through some bond measure money that they obtained back in 2014. And Caltrans is a partner on that project. It's within our right of way, but we'll be providing oversight of that and hope to see an undercrossing for mountain lions and red-legged frogs and the western pond turtle constructed here within the next few years, as long as they can get their funding. So a lot of things in the works, and District 7, like we said, leading the way with the construction of the Wallace-Annenberg wildlife overcrossing, and that construction is underway. So we're getting there and we're making progress slowly but surely. I think that was more than a few minutes. I'm sorry.
Okay, and like you were mentioning, we do have a webinar coming up that's planned for, I think, May for wildlife crossings. We'll have 3 or 4 experts on that, so definitely stay tuned for that one. And while you were speaking, Lindsay, I did put a link that I found on our Caltrans website. This shows some of the wildlife crossings and the connectivity, so that is in the chat as well.
And I would say if anyone who, thank you, and anyone, students or otherwise interested in that area, definitely reach out to us after this webinar too. And depending on the part of the state that you're in, we can always connect and share data, share information, and go from there.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All the LinkedIn links are in the chat now for all the panelists, so don't forget to connect with them on LinkedIn and follow up. And let's see, anything else, Harriet, that we want to mention? We've got a couple of minutes left.
That is about all we've got time for, folks. So I'm just going to share our contact details. Thank you again for tuning in. Thank you to our amazing panelists, everyone who's still here. Give them a round of applause, you know, a virtual round of applause. This was phenomenal. I feel like I've learned so much. And it's just huge to see the robust partnerships and all the robust experts that are involved in the responsibility of environmental, you know, disruption mitigation and just maintaining the environment as best we can while moving things forward as efficiently as we can. So really are so grateful to have you all on the Caltrans team, and also so glad to hear that you love being here, because then all of you on point mentioned how much you love the people. So that's huge. And what more could we ask for is doing work that we love, working towards a common goal, you know, within an organization that shares our values with people who are awesome. So I'm really glad to hear that the 3 of you sound like you're in that kind of a spot. So thank you again. Thank you again. And thank you to all of our attendees. We really appreciate you tuning in to this episode 4. If you have any suggestions for future topics, anything that you'd like to hear more about, please email us. We are always curious to hear about any suggestions from our audience. And stay tuned for episode 5. The topic is to be determined. Right now, we're working on something pretty exciting. So consider it your holiday gift that you'll be unwrapping towards the end of December, or potentially in the next week. But consider it that, something to look forward to. And your feedback is really appreciated. If you wouldn't mind, when this webinar closes, there will be a quick survey, very, very quick, just to hear your thoughts, anything we can do to improve. We want to make sure we're delivering this to the best of our ability and bringing you the most interesting topics. So today was definitely one of those. So thank you again, Lindsay, Helen, and Quint. You guys were phenomenal. Thank you, Laura, for always being a fun co-host. These are always so fun to do with you. And with that, we'll let you all go. We appreciate you, and take care. Have a great holiday.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity.